So Judge Engoron says that he wants this $350 million within 30 days. Now, I know that you're planning on appealing this, but you've still got to put up the full amount pending that appeal. Does Donald Trump have that kind of money sitting around?
Yes. I mean, he does. Of course, he has money. You know, he's a billionaire. We know that.
I don't know. That might not be true. Was that is a lawyer, Alina Habba? I don't think she's got that right.
Well,
I mean, unless, you know, he comes up with the money, he has it sitting around. But
there are a lot of billionaires that wouldn't have that kind of money sitting around on their side table.
Well, they have things. They have things. So anyhow, Donald Trump's attorneys now say he cannot secure the roughly $500 million bond for the civil fraud judgment. They asked a judge yesterday for an emergency stay, claiming a bond for the full amount is, quote, a practical impossibility after reaching out to 30 companies. Trump and his company need to post the full amount by Monday to prevent New York Attorney General Letitia James from being able to collect while he appeals, which could include seizing his assets. While Trump claims to be a billionaire, he does not have the liquidity to pay the bond himself, as the New York Times points out. Most of his net worth is from the value of his things, his real estate, which bond companies really accept as collateral. So let's dig into this. Joining us now, investigative reporter for the New York Times, Suzanne Craig. She won a Pulitzer for an exhaustive 18-month investigation into former President Trump's finances that debunked his claims of self-made wealth. Also with us, former Deputy Chief of the Criminal Division for the Southern District of New York, Christy Greenberg. She's now an MSNBC analyst. Good to have you both. Suzanne Craig, just curious, are there any other avenues Trump could use to pay this? What do you, with all the research that you have done into his finances, what do you think could happen here?
Right. You know, the filing does sound dire because he can't come up with the cash. And what was made really clear yesterday was that they need cash. They're not willing to accept buildings. So he, in the next week, has got to find it. You know, there could be a last-minute sale of a building where he comes up with the cash. Somebody could offer it to him in a transaction. I mean, that's sort of something that will be a taxable event and will, I think, be pretty headline grabbing. But I think there's still some options available to him. I wouldn't say this is a closed story until, you know, we're right at the deadline and we, you know, he makes a filing just saying, I can't pay.
Right. Like a family member? Could a family member, like Jared, with the money that he received from abroad, could he pay?
I don't know if he could through that specific fund, but that's certainly one option. And if something like that happens, I think, you know, this is all new territory, so you don't want to say anything for certain, but I think we're going to have some transparency into where the money came. But if, let's say, a family member came forward, that would be considered a gift or a loan, and there would be tax consequences to it that would cost him. But so far, we haven't seen that. I don't want to say for sure if that was going to happen, that we would know about it already. But so far, that hasn't materialized. And he's in a situation where a number of companies have just said, we're not willing to go near a appeal bond of this size, and we want cold, hard cash.
Wow.
So Suzanne, first of all, there would be quite a few billionaires that wouldn't have this cash laying around, wouldn't be liquid. That's one. And two, let me know if you agree with that. And number two, Donald Trump's problem right now, if he did have to sell some of his properties, commercial real estate post-COVID has just been pummeled and continues to go down. So he would be selling distressed assets, wouldn't he, or assets that certainly are not at their highest level.
Well, I think A, not at their highest level, and B, not an ideal circumstance. This is really tough to close a transaction on a major commercial building in a small amount of time. You know, I keep thinking about one particular building that could be a possibility. He has a 50-50 venture in Las Vegas with a fellow named Phil Ruffin, who is a big supporter of his. There could be, we could see a sale like that where Phil Ruffin buys him out of that tower. I don't know if that would get him to the magic number, but those are the sort of things I'm thinking that just may be options that they're looking at just to get that cash together quickly. That may not even be an option. Sort of just one of the things I've been thinking at as I've been looking at his portfolio and what could be sold in a short amount of time to meet this. But it's a lot of money. Most people don't have that sort of money sitting around. And keep in mind, he already had to come up with cash for the E. Jean Carroll bond. So that's already put a squeeze on what resources he has available.
So, Christy, he's got about a week's time to do this. From your perspective, how do you see this playing out?
Well, one thing Donald Trump is asking for is to just pay $100 million and not pay the full amount. But he cites in his brief a number of cases to support that. They're all federal. None of them are New York State cases. There is nothing in the New York State code that says you can pay some, 25 cents on the dollar for this, or that you can, because there's a monitor's oversight, that somehow that should change the analysis. By the way, wasn't being completely forthcoming with the monitor as it is. So I don't see him legally being able to get out of this. He can appeal all he wants, but if he wants the judgment to be stayed, he has to put up the full amount.